Hi, it's me. I'm Shar, and today I'm going to be talking about a really important essential in my workspace, my TourBox. I get a good number of people who ask me, "What's that thing on your table?" And the answer to that is the tool that's genuinely made my process so much quicker. Before anything else, yes, this is a sponsored video, but I also want to stress that I've used my TourBox for every day of work I've had since I got it. And it's been 5 years now. I've used it so much over the past few years that the sweat on my hands have caused some of the dials and buttons to yellow. Well used, well loved, and still works perfectly. This is probably the most yes to a sponsored video I've ever been. I'll be explaining why and how I use it in this video and why it's been so important in my work process, especially in animation. I've also placed timestamps on this video in case there's a specific part of the TourBox you want to know more about. Okay, let's begin. So what is a TourBox exactly? The TourBox is a creative console. I guess you can think of it as sort of a gaming controller for editing, drawing, and any other program you generally use, since you can program it to work on anything. The buttons and dials fit pretty comfy for both left and right-handed users, and you can position it in any way that feels best for you. Though to be clear, I haven't really had the whimsy to try it upside down yet, but you should also be able to do that too. It's easy to connect to most modern devices, being able to use USB-C plug-and-play and Bluetooth. Newer models can even connect to your phone or tablet if you're more for working on the go. Okay, so cool looking device. But nowadays there are so many other shortcut and hotkey devices. So what exactly makes this one so different from the others? Well, I think where the magic truly comes from is the software that comes with the TourBox. The TourBox software works really well and has a very user-friendly UI. I've used a lot of devices that need you to install drivers on your computer, and this is one of the only ones I've never really had a problem with, and am often amazed by when it comes to the extent of features included and how often they're updated. Aside from being able to apply the TourBox to work differently for every application, you can also mix and match buttons and dials to perform unique actions. Considering the standard layout comes equipped with 3 dials and 11 buttons, and considering you can program it to work a different way if you twist the dial, press the dial, hold down the button, double press the button, or combine 2 buttons together, you end up being able to program over 160 unique actions for each application, which is kind of nuts. I don't think you even need to perform that many actions for one program, but having the option is really nice. You can also set macros to perform multi-step tasks. So if you want to do something like have a Clip Studio Paint animation file and want to quickly export it as a PNG sequence or as an MP4 file without having to go through all of the menus, you totally can. You want to have a button drag your mouse from one coordinate to another? Yes, you can. You want to have a button open a file, wait for 10 seconds, and then type, "Yay, hooray!" Yes, you can. And if you ever forget what to press, you can even label these and access them in a floating menu when you need to. I'll be explaining how I set my applications in the next section, where I talk a bit more about how I personally use the TourBox for my work process. I set up the TourBox for a lot of programs when I first got it. Clip Studio Paint, Adobe Animate, Adobe Premiere, Blender, my browser, some games. And to be clear with the games part, my keyboard at that time didn't have function keys because I didn't have a lot of space on my desk, so I utilized it for a handful of games with buttons I didn't have. I had to think outside of the box. The TourBox, so to speak. I'm sorry. I started experimenting with the TourBox mainly for animating on Adobe Animate, and I'm gonna be honest, I went into it expecting a completely regular experience, but I immediately adored using all of it. Being able to scrub through frames and keyframes in the timeline easily was such a breath of fresh air after having to use Control comma and Control period buttons all the time. Zooming in with a dial instead of letting go of my pen, pressing control, and then scrolling with my faulty mouse wheel was also a breath of fresh air. Making a new frame by pressing one button instead of pressing the function key and 6 and going, oh oops, my keyboard isn't in function mode after seeing my screen brightness go up and feeling like an idiot? Breath of fresh air. No driver or software issues? I am breathing so much. I love oxygen. But yes, when it comes to processes like animation, which require a lot of shortcuts for both timeline scrubbing and illustration tools, TourBox really cuts down on the time you usually waste on doing keyboard acrobatics. I used to have 3 different presets for Adobe Animate, mainly button mapping for when I'm doing line art, for when I'm doing cleanup, and when I'm doing colors. I would switch between these by pressing my dial, and a little pop-up on the top would tell me, hey, you're using line art mode right now, just so you know. Now I only use one, and seeing me work with that one preset kind of feels like watching someone play DDR with their life on the line. And I'm being genuine when I say that it has at least half the time I usually spend working on animation. There's a reason why I never unplug it from my PC, even though it has Bluetooth. I've carried this over to my other programs, and right now I use it a lot for Clip Studio Paint for illustration and animation, and Adobe Premiere for editing videos. For a lot of popular programs, they do share presets and new features that work for that program specifically, like how they have custom floating windows for CSP with their dynamic color picker and Lightroom with tonal correction. I also just really like how it's built. It has a weight to it, and when I don't have anything going on, I kind of just play with it like a fidget toy. This is not in any way a thing they advertise. I just really like pressing the buttons and spinning the dial sometimes. Being transparent for a sec, I think the only 2 negative things I've ever personally experienced working with the TourBox so far are that there was this one time I would leave my computer open for days at a time, and I needed to restart at that time an older version of the TourBox software because having it go on and off Windows sleep mode sometimes made it lose connection to my device. As a basic rule, don't do that. Don't keep your computer on all the time. Let your computer rest. Sorry, buddy. So it's that and memorizing the crazy amount of button combos I make for my programs. But that's also partially a skill issue, I think. Obviously, at some point, you'll develop muscle memory for how you've made all the buttons work, but if you overwhelm yourself with patterns you've never really familiarized yourself with before, then yeah, you'll have to tone it down a bit first, practice, and tweak the shortcuts a bit more to your liking. No matter how freaky your keybinds end up being, they're your freaky keybinds. They're your baby. You will prosper. There are visual solutions that TourBox has made to help alleviate this problem, though, with the introduction of the tour menu and the D-pad HUD. They're really out there trying to help you remember. In this next section, which if you're now curious about how the setup and features are like, is going to be me quickly going through the features I feel are the most important. It's gonna get a little technical, but if it's something you end up wanting to get, I do want to be thorough with its use cases. When it comes to setup, you can set a preset for any application you currently have open. When it's all set, it'll switch to your keybinds automatically when you're using the program. There's no need to switch it manually. They already have default presets built in for popular creative software like Photoshop, Clip Studio Paint, Lightroom, Premiere, all of which you can tweak to your liking. When it comes to setting up the buttons, it's really easy to bind and navigate. You can genuinely just press the button or the button combo you want and then set it from there. What you assign can be a mouse action, a keyboard button, or a macro. When I'm lazy, I just set a keyboard button because it's quick, but I think the cleanest way to do it is to make several labeled macros, so you'd only have to edit the macro itself instead of looking for the button for it. Going further into macros, for the inexperienced, macros are labeled sets of actions you want to do with the click of a button. Whenever I use CSP for animation, I often forget to add a color and draft layer to my frame after animating everything, and have to inevitably create 2 new layers under each frame and label it properly. Really, really tedious. So after slowly getting annoyed by it each time, I made a macro to do all of that for me with a single button combo. It may still be a bit tedious, but it is mathematically like 8 times faster than doing it the normal way. A little more info about presets. You can save a specific set of programmed actions to a preset. Let's say I want to use the TourBox for illustrating and animating in Clip Studio. I can make a preset specifically for illustration and a preset specifically for animation. And I can change that easily by programming one of the buttons with the change preset action. And then the app notifies you every time you switch over. Another feature, the tour menu. It essentially adds more buttons in the scenario you're out of buttons. I don't know when that'll happen to you, but I don't judge. Another feature, the HUD. There's a D-pad heads-up display that shows you what button combos you've assigned to your D-pad. I have this turned off, but only because I'm already familiar with my layout. It's nice to have it on when you're still learning what you set your buttons to. Ultimately, TourBox is an excellent companion tool for anyone in the digital creative field. Would I survive without it? Definitely yes. I'm happy to have never needed to change any of my program default shortcuts and still be able to function even in a scenario without my TourBox. But in all other scenarios where I do have it, I would 100% use it. There is no reason for me not to. In a field where the creative process is as tedious as it is fun, the extra convenience it gives me is very significant. There is no reason for me to bat for a device this hard if I haven't actively been using it for like 5 years at this point. If you do this professionally, I would highly recommend it as a companion device. I've used all of the models, of which there are only 4 at the moment, and they all work pretty well and have similar features. There's one for every budget, and they even have a light version you can get for under 100 USD. And that's my little TourBox tour of the box, if you will. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you again to TourBox for sponsoring me and for making the TourBox. If there's anything I wasn't able to cover here that you want to know, or anything about you and your work process, how you feel like it could be improved, tips and tricks, how your day's been, feel free to comment them below. I do my best to read all of the comments, and I've been trying to reply more. I think you can see me being very noisy, especially in my YouTube community posts. But yeah, it's always pretty interesting to read what you guys think and how things are going. A big and warm thanks also to all the YouTube and Coffee members who support me despite my chaotic and sporadic upload schedule. I really appreciate it. And that's more or less it for now. Games I've been playing recently, a lot of Slay the Spire 2 and a lot of Resident Evil. It's been pretty good. Yup. Okay, that's all. Bye.